Welcome to our dramatic presentation of the people who encountered Jesus in his last days. Over the centuries, people have desired to understand the days before the horrific and violent death of our Lord. How can such a kind and loving Messiah be put to death in such an unjust way? How does God allow such a terrible event to occur to such an innocent person? Please relax and travel back in time into the days of our Lord by the visions of the people who loved him. He changed them all, and if you agree, he will change you also. Who was he?
The woman with the alabaster jar. Oh, yes, I remember him. Wherever the gospel is told, your deeds will be remembered, he said. He was like no other man I'd ever met. It was his eyes that could look into the very center of my soul. I needed him to know everything about me. I needed him to give me forgiveness, to set me free from a life that had come crashing down around me. For him, I would have given everything, all that I had. I don't know why I thought of doing it. I took oil from the merchants, pure nard, the most expensive thing that I had ever owned. I won't say how I got it, but I just knew I had to give it to him. I knew I wanted to. I had to. So I broke the bottle and I poured it over his head. His disciples were furious. They couldn't believe what I'd done. They were so angry about the waste and that he had even let me get near to him. But he just looked at me deeply. He understood. And with another glance, his disciples fell silent. And then he said a funny thing. He said, I had anointed him for burial. I didn't know what he meant. I was just standing there in a room full of silenced, angry men, right in front of Jesus. And I wanted to cry and laugh all at the same time. Who was he? I'll tell you this. In my hand, I held a broken bottle. But inside, my soul had been healed.
The one with the water jug. I knew them all, of course, Peter, James, John, all the rest of them. I'd seen them about. I make it my business to know. Information. Information is very useful to some of my clients. Information is power. He wanted a room, needed somewhere quiet in Jerusalem, somewhere he wouldn't be disturbed. Somewhere quiet in the middle of Jerusalem during Passover? Now that was going to take some doing. I found them their room. Very nice it was too. Up above the crowds, away from prying eyes. He needed that, needed some time with his friends. I didn't know then, but he needed time to say goodbye. I showed his disciples where it was, and they had a code. They asked the landlord, "The teacher says, where is the room where my disciples and I will eat the Passover meal?" That way, he'd know they were genuine. I only met him that one time, and that's my regret. I wish I had more time. We always wish for things when it's too late. And the next time I saw him, I was crushed in a crowd of screaming voices and raising fists, and there he was. But this time, he was being dragged by Roman soldiers. This time, he was covered in open wounds. This time, he was carrying a wooden crossbeam. Like I say, I'm the go-between. I help people smooth their way, make things happen. But now, there was nothing I could do. I was powerless, and it did not feel good. If only he had spoken to me earlier, perhaps I could have done something, maybe found him a safe passage. I could have called in some favors owed to me. A few words here, the odd bribe there. I could have got him out. The crowd moved on, but there I stood, just staring. He was gone, and I was left standing beneath a darkening sky. A fixer who couldn't fix.
I remember him. I remember that night. We moved in the night. See, the darkness. It gives you an edge, an element of surprise. It allows you to strike fear into the heart of your enemy. We came armed with clubs, swords, and a few handmade specialties. We weren't taking any chances. His disciples were big guys. They were fishermen, Galileans, hard men. They could put up a decent fight if they needed to. The insider showed us the way to identify. He said, one-eye kiss. That was our signal. That way we knew when all the chaos and confusion started, we knew which one to grab. So I tell you, he may have served our purposes, but I wouldn't want a friend like that. Everyone hates a traitor, even if he's working for you. But you see, the thing is, I was close. I saw what happened the moment the traitor kissed Jesus. Just before we grabbed him, he said, friend, do what you came to do. There was a look in his eye. Something passed between them and the traitor. And I can't explain it. It's just a look of understanding, acceptance. I don't know. But seconds later, I was on the ground. The big guy cut my ear off. And it was that way. And Jesus stopped the violence. He told them, put your swords down. Enough is enough, he said. And then he turned and he looked at us and he asked us, why hadn't we come before? Why do we come now in darkness when he'd been out in the daylight, preaching in the temple? There's a good reason for that. We didn't want a riot. We didn't want crowds getting involved. Not a Passover. The place is like a tinderbox. Everything's ready to explode. So we just dragged him away. His friends all scattered. I don't know, with the pain in my ear and everything else to worry about. But I wondered to myself, what did the guy actually do? Why were we doing this? And I remember that look between the traitor and his master. I started thinking, well, did he plan all this? Could he have planned all this? Could he have known what was going to happen? And it was like he had willingly gone with this. Like he said, he was in charge the whole time. I don't know, but I had a really strange feeling then. I still have it now.
The landlord. It was late at night when I first met them. They looked cold and scared. He was trying to put a brave face on it. You could tell he was a good man, an honest man, but he looked way out of his depth. And she seemed so young, so vulnerable. They both did. Country folk, up from Nazareth, easily taken in by the ways of the city. Of course, they were two of the thousands of travelers passing through for the Roman census. There were so many like them. They seemed so different, somehow as if they knew something that they couldn't communicate, something that had terrified the life out of them. I ran an inn in Bethlehem in those days. Hundreds of people passed through my doors. I dealt with my fair share of drunks and losers and Roman troops who had no intention of paying. But I knew with this couple that they were genuine. They came into my place road weary and sore. They seemed so down on their luck. As they walked in, I realized she was about to drop. He looked at me imploringly, but I had nowhere. Everything was booked. All of Bethlehem was booked up. But then I had a stable out the back. It was tiny, with my old donkey standing in it. Anyway, they were so grateful, so relieved, and then there he was, born in my stable, with Zeb, my old donkey, standing outside. The news went around fast. Always does when there's a new baby to be seen. People always love babies. Even the shepherds, looking after the local flock, got in on the act and came to see what was going on. I had to chase them all away in the end. Poor girl. She needed sleep, and he looked exhausted. I must say I felt proud that night, like I was the father myself. Didn't feel that again until I had my own kids. Just so happy I could do something for them. Well, they went away soon after, and I didn't see any more of them. Didn't expect to. As I say, there were thousands of them on the move. It was odd, though. I kind of heard rumors over the years. An important holy man from humble beginnings, teaching in Galilee. Some people told me he'd been born in a stable in Bethlehem. But you always get a lot of stories in my game once the wine starts flowing. But strangely, I did meet him again. Only by that time, he was a man. I'd sold up the business in Bethlehem by then and moved back to manage the wife's family place in Jerusalem after her dad died. I hadn't seen him since he was a tiny baby, but my cousin had been following him. He's the bright spark of the family. He knew all the details, and I put two and two together. Who was he? I didn't ask. His disciples had organized everything. I had a reservation that I had to keep my mouth shut about. No problem around here. You learn to keep your mouth shut if you don't want the patrols becoming interested in you. I had a good room, and they were pleased. All important meals, by all accounts. So you see, I gave him shelter, right at the beginning of his life and at the end.
Simon of Cyrene. I was on my way to Jerusalem for the Passover. I heard about Jesus, and I knew he'd be there. I was hoping to hear what he had to say. I come from a city of philosophers, where there were always new ideas buzzing around in the cafes and the bazaars, and people would discuss the deepest topics. How did the universe originate? Is there really true knowledge? Is there a reality beyond this world? As I came into the city, I could see a crucifixion party coming up the hill. Just some other poor unfortunate dragging his own means of torture behind him. It's a horrible, inhumane way to die. What are the ethical standards of a good life? That is the central question of philosophy. The way the Romans behaved with their subject, peoples flouted those demands, crucifying those they classified as terrorists and insurgents, is an act of terror and a means of ruling through fear. As I got nearer, I could hear the crowd jeering, real hatred in their voices. Hatred that comes from having been let down. Hatred and scorn and fear that you might be next. The victim looked as if he couldn't go on. Seemed to me that he lost a lot of blood, too. Was probably going into shock. The extremities were white. The body was closing down. I wondered how we managed to get so far. Before I knew it, the Roman soldiers grabbed me. The Roman soldiers knew their trade. Didn't want a dead man on their hands. Didn't want to give him the luxury before they had a chance to nail him up. So they made me carry the cross. It was heavy, full of splinters, and slippery with his blood. I was scared. Really, really scared. How had I gotten into this? I was frightened. The drunken troops might crucify me by accident. There was no way out. They kicked me and forced me on. The victim was dragged in chains right beside me. Head down, breathing hard, trying to overcome the pain. I didn't know he was a revolutionary or an activist, a slave who tried to escape. Who knows? As I say, there were lots of crucifixions, but I could hear him mumbling. I realized he was praying. He was praying all the time. Now, who you're carrying that cross? Know who you're carrying that cross for? The Roman sergeant punched me in the arm as he spoke. No, I said, I've never seen him before. That's Jesus. That is, King of the Jews. He doesn't look like much of a king now, does he? There was sycophantic laughter from his troops. One of the soldiers shouted, "Hey, Sergeant, do you reckon we'll get to see this kingdom of his? He says it's about to appear at any moment." And here I was, dragging the crossbeam, the instrument they were going to kill him on. I don't know if it was the heat of the day or a trick of the light. But as I stared at him, as I lugged that bloody cross up the hill, I swear he turned to me and he said, "Simon." He said my name right there. In the midst of all the hatred and the jeering and the blood and the violence, he said, "Simon." And no more. But he said it in a way I've never heard it said. And no one has ever said it since. Like he knew me. He really knew me. Knew who I was. But how could he? I didn't know him. I've never met him before in my life. And when he said my name, the fear subsided. I knew I could do this one last thing for him, right at the end of his life. And his eyes. His eyes, they were so kind, so full of sorrow, like he cared for the people who were doing this to him, like he was praying for them.
Veronica, what could I, a poor woman, do? In this case, more than a man. They'd never have let a man through the crowds, never let a man wipe his face. The crowd, that hateful, despising crowd. A few days before, they cheered for him. All that dancing and carrying on, how quickly it can turn, how fickle. Hard faces, eyes that lusted for blood, they enjoyed seeing a weaker person suffer. And the arrogant soldiers, too, flexing their muscles, showing off to the girls, beating the crowds with sticks. He stumbled, and I saw my chance. In a moment, I was through the line of hateful faces, through the column of red-cloaked soldiers, past swords and clubs, the metals that cut flesh, the wood that crushes bones, past the words that sear and burn. I took off my headscarf, and I held his head in my arms, wiping away as much blood as I could. I held him close to my breast, like a mother with a child, cradling him in the midst of all that horror, a moment that seemed like an eternity. I could no longer hear their voices. I just saw the man who had cured the sick, given people back their sight, let them walk again, the man who had made me whole. As long as I could, I held him, and then they pushed me aside, down onto the road, under the feet of that crowd. Then they were gone, on up the hill to his inevitable end. I sat by the road, holding my headscarf in my hands, and I wept. Who was he? He is the one whose imprint and image I bear.
Judas Iscariot, so quick to condemn me, so quick to blame. They made me their scapegoat. All along I worked for him, served him. I've been his treasure and his confidant. I had his ear. I'm good at solving problems, sorting things out, getting things done. You see, he needed me. I thought he needed me on that final day. I thought he knew what he was doing. I thought he had it planned. Everything was planned. The donkey, the Passover, my price. 30 pieces of silver. 30 pieces of silver. And a soul damned for eternity. They took him. They condemned him to death. And I had led them straight to him. I thought he knew what he was doing. I thought the kingdom he was talking about would come. I didn't think he'd actually have to go through that, you see. And there he was, covered in blood, carrying that cross up the hill. And I was the one who sent him there. I watched as he fell in sheer exhaustion. The weight of the wood upon him, head down, staring at the earth beneath, dust and death, shadows and darkness. And I could do nothing. He was a man, a very human man, the man that I believed in, followed, loved, and betrayed. A condemned man carrying his cross in blood and sweat and fear, unable to bear the weight of that being, falling down to the ground. Now I have seen death. This was a very real his pain? Could you bear mine? Who was he? The man who saved me or condemned me? I don't know. But he died on that hillside, and I was to blame.
The woman caught in adultery. I didn't mean for things to go so far, to get that out of hand. It just sort of happened. I mean, sometimes woman has needs too, you know. I mean, and then there were rough hands grabbing me, and there were loads of them, dressed in black with blank, pious faces. And it was me they accused, never mind the man. Where was he in all of this? Oh, I'll tell you where he was. He was down a bunk and right out that second floor window at the first sign of trouble. He was quite happy to let me face the music on my own. But it does take two to tango, you know? So they dragged me along on the hard ground, barely let me get a chance to cover myself, and right through the marketplace, flung me down at the feet of that teacher Jesus. Why did they take me to him? Well, I realized later what they were doing. You see, according to the law, I had committed a capital offense. For what I had done, they could stone me, and you could see that that's exactly what they were waiting to do. Pious religious men, never a bad thought in their heads, never an instance of desire or lust. They wanted Jesus to say, stone her, but he was preaching a religion of love, a God of love. He was saying, turn the other cheek. But if he told them to stone me, he'd be discredited. He'd be a hypocrite. And that would be the end of his mission. But if he told them to let me go, then they would say he was a dangerous heretic who didn't obey the law of Moses. And again, he'd be discredited and liable to be stoned himself. They thought they had him trapped, but he was far too clever. He knew what they were really up to, what they were thinking. So what did he do? He wrote in the sand. That's right. He just wrote in the sand. And then he looked at them with those piercing eyes, and the men just sort of melted. All they wanted to do then was get far away and hide. He looked at them and he said, "The man standing here who's never sinned is welcome to throw the first stone." Well, they judged themselves, and they knew there would be no stoning that day. They were so full of sin, all they could do was walk away, and walk away very quickly. So when they'd all gone, he looked at me, but now his eyes were full of kindness. He helped me to my feet, arranged my tunic, and said, "Well, where are all these important religious men who were so anxious to stone you? Where have they gone?" Is there no one here to condemn you? No, Lord, I replied, there's no one. Well then, he said, I don't condemn you either. Go, and don't do it again. What did I do? The only thing I could do. I followed him. I was there with him on that awful day, standing by the cross with the other women when the sky turned black. And in the end, it was only us women who did stand by him. Men, in my experience, just seemed to run away. You ask me, who was he? I'll tell you. He was the man who saved not only my life, but my soul. He didn't want anything from me. He wasn't trying to trick me with smooth words or false promises. He wasn't like the others. Everything he said was reliable. Everything was true. He was the best man I'd ever met. His love and acceptance gave me a new start, a new pathway. My life changed forever that day.
John Mark. I saw the fight and how in the end he stopped it all. I saw the traitor kiss him and the guards take him away, and I saw all the disciples bolt, frightened for their lives. But I stood watching too long. Suddenly I realized there were soldiers all around me, and one of them grabbed my shoulder, but I was lucky. I was small and fast. I managed to get both arms out of my tunic and run. The soldier was left holding the cloth, and I got away. As I ran, I could hear them laughing. I looked back and saw them holding up the tunic, waving it at me, mocking and pointing. I just kept running till I thought my lungs would burst. I was so scared. That was the worst night of my life. Hiding out in the alleys and doorways, cold and terrified, listening for the patrols. They'd taken him. Everyone had fled, and I was alone. I was there that day. I hid at the back of the crowd. I saw him carrying the cross up the hill. He was covered in blood. I've never seen anyone in so much pain. I couldn't bear it, the indignity of it, the shame. They'd beaten him up so badly, humiliated him with that spiked crown and that stupid robe. I wanted to run in there and rescue him, fight the soldiers myself, but the women stopped me. None of his disciples were there by then, only some of the women who'd followed him. One of them tried to help him. She got through, but she was nearly trampled by the crowd. Somehow I managed to pull her out. He fell 3 times. 3 times under the weight of that appalling cross. And every time his cuts got deeper, the splinters dug further and further into his skin, and his muscles tore. Every time it got harder and harder to get up. And when he fell, the soldiers just whipped him all the more. I couldn't get near Golgotha. It was too dangerous. I was frightened they'd recognize me, so I just hid near the walls. But I heard what happened later. I heard from the women later, from women how he died. They told me that an important man had buried him and where the tomb was. Later I went and sat there. I just wanted to be near him. Just wanted to say I'd been there on that awful night and on that day of total abandonment, the day when all hope died.
I remember him. I remember the night he was taken. And I remember that big guy he was always with. You couldn't miss him. Always looking self-important. He shoved me out of the way when I tried to get near. I kicked him in the shin. He said, "Get." Peter, his name was. I saw them drag Jesus in. All the priests and guards and a mass of others. There were loads of shouting, people hitting each other, spitting, disgusting, and swearing. They took him up to the high priest's house for the trial. Poor guy. I didn't think he'd stand much chance once that lot got their teeth into him. I knew what they were like. When I turned around, I could see people sitting by the fire. And I was sure I recognized one of them. So I went over to see, and sure enough, there he was. The same guy that had shoved me off the road a few days earlier. "Ha! I know you," I said. "You're one of his friends. What are you doing here?" He stood up sharp at that. The guards were looking at him by then, weighing him up. He looked scared. Not so tough now. Even a high priest servant girl knows. He said, "What are you going on about? I've never met him." "Oh yeah," I said. "Well, how come I saw you with him near the temple 2 days ago? You shoved me out of the way." "I know who you are." He walked off then. He was trying to get away. Then someone else said, "Yeah, I've seen you too. And anyway, you must know him. You're a Galilean." They all started laughing then, because everyone knows all Galileans know each other. But he looked angry and scared by then. "I'm telling you the truth. So help me God," he said. "I've never met this man. I don't know who you're talking about." But it was weird. After they'd all accused him and laughed at him, just after he'd said he didn't know Jesus, he started to cry. Great big guy like that, crying like a baby in front of everyone. He took off then into the night. A few people tried to stop him, but he was too strong. He pushed them aside and ran off. I've really never seen a man cry like that before.
Barabbas. Do you really know who I am? Want to know my name? Want to hear if I remember your Jesus? Well, I'll tell you, I'm the one who should have got what he got. Yeah, that's right. I'm Barabbas. What's it to you? Want to hear that I was a good man? That I made up for what they did to him? That I spent my life in good works trying to repent for all that had happened? Well, I haven't, and I wasn't a good man. I was a thief, and I murdered Roman soldiers. At least I was prepared to do something. Not like your Jesus of Nazareth, with his path of peace and passive resistance. Peace, ha! What is peace? There will never be peace. I expect you want me to say that I should have been up there, huh? That I should have been crucified and not him? That I had done wrong and deserved what was coming to me while he had done nothing? Is that it? Is that what you want? Well, you can stuff it. I don't care about him or anyone else, for that matter. They let me go and he died in my place. Well, who among you wouldn't say yes to that? Ask yourselves. Really ask yourselves. All the horrible way humans legally kill each other, would you go to your death that way? Or would you take the pardon and let someone go for you? You didn't have to think too hard, did you? And crucifixion, could you face that? Would you be willingly nailed high up on a crossbeam, burning in the sun for hours, days, gasping, fighting for breath as your lungs begin to swamp with fluid? And you do fight. Ironic, isn't it? The will to live is so strong, you'll even fight when it's obviously hopeless, covered in your own filth, screaming in your own blood, most of them driven mad by thirst and pain. Would you do it, or would you let someone else do it? I don't see many hands going up. I don't see any volunteers. If anyone would follow me, let him take up his cross. Pick up a cross. Really? Do you know how heavy a crossbeam is? Could you carry a crossbeam strapped to your lacerated back through the streets of hating crowds? Could you endure the spitting, the kicks, the punches, the whip when you don't move fast enough? Could you be nailed, screaming onto this piece of wood, and then be hauled upright in the face of your torturers and accusers? A cross. Could you pick that up? I couldn't, and I didn't. It was him. Who was he? I don't know, but he had guts. He took it for me, all the way to Golgotha.
always been a family. No one disrespects your family. If they do, they'll know about it. These people are trouble. That's why you have to come down hard on any of them that step out of line. There are zealots trying to kill you, and religious maniacs trying to create sedition. You can't have these people loose in this kind of place. It's too dangerous. You make an example of some to warn the others. Don't get any funny ideas. It's the only way to keep law and order. Crucifixion is not simply a way of killing people. You can do that with a sword quite easily and more quickly. Crucifixion is reserved for the politicos and thought criminals. A cross looks like a signpost, and it is. See that signpost? Take a good hard look and think about it. We're in charge. Step in the line, and this is what you get. Have no doubt about it. We don't mess around. Are you really sure you want to lead the masses in a revolution? You're much more likely to end up here than sitting on a throne in some royal palace drinking wine. It's a clear message. You can stand up and be counted for your cause, but Rome will have the last word. We know what we're doing. We're the pattern. That day, there were 3 of them headed for Golgotha. I didn't come on duty until the morning. The poor guy we were leaving looked as if they had spent the night beating him up. He had already been pretty badly whipped. Already lost a lot of blood. I didn't think he'd last long once we got him there, if we could get him there at all. In the end, we had to grab someone from the crowd and get him to carry the crossbeam. There was no way this guy was ever going to make it. The King of Jews, they called him. They'd made him a crown of thorns. They say he's a miracle and a prophet. I looked at him then, and through all his blood and sweat and grime, I realized with a jolt that I knew him. 2 years earlier, I'd been stationed in Capernaum. My servant had been ill. The doctors could do nothing for him. I had heard Jesus, the Jewish prophet, and I'd asked for him. He had been willing to come into my house, willing to defile himself in the home of a Gentile, just to heal my servant. But I knew he didn't need to. He could heal him from wherever he was. Just give the order, I said. He was like me, a soldier under command. I looked again at this poor, beaten man. I couldn't believe it was him. What could I do? I had no superior to ask. I was the superior. I couldn't act against Roman law, or my men, or the crowd baying for all that blood around me. It's like I said, you're not in control. Suddenly you realize that they are. You have to act because they demand it. They are practicing in their own oppression, and you have no choice. We took him to Golgotha, and the soldiers automatically went into action, nailing him to the cross, hauling up the crossbeam, dividing any possessions among themselves. I couldn't look at him, couldn't catch his eye. The horror of what I was doing, of what I was directly responsible for, was burning into my brain. I was powerless to do anything, powerless to stop it. How had it come to this? But in an unguarded moment, I caught his eye. I expected him to hate me for what I was, for what I had done. How much he had done for me, and now I was doing this to him. When I caught his eye, I knew he recognized me, and I still can't believe what then happened. The only thing in the face of this broken, wretched man
as he looked at me was forgiveness. He was forgiving me for all this, for everything. I have never seen anything like it. Truly, this man was the Son of God.
Martha. I was a friend of Jesus's, but I didn't start out as one. He changed my life. I was an angry person. And I'm really not afraid to admit that. I always thought I knew what was best. People did what I wanted, or I'd throw a tantrum. I liked to think I was doing them a favor, liked to be busy, always organizing everything, always in charge. I was a bully to my sister. I made her life hell. Most people cowered away from me. I had that power, I could control them. They respected me, but they also hated me. He got the measure of me the first time I met him. He knew immediately what I was like. He was the one I couldn't control. I tried, of course. I tried to use guilt tactics, which are very effective. Don't you care that I'm doing all this work? Don't you care that Mary's just sitting there with wide eyes while I fuss around making everyone feel uncomfortable, while I make the whole room feel awkward? But it made no difference to him. Mary has chosen the better part, he said. That floored me. Most people didn't answer me back. They wouldn't have dared. I hated how much he was the center of attention. That's where I like to be. But his words melted my soul. And the touch of his hand on mine was peace, deep peace, not like a tranquilizer. That's numbness. This was healing. This was restoring. But it also meant I realized what I had been doing. After Zacchaeus met Jesus, he gave most of his money away. He righted wrongs. He paid double to people he'd swindled. That was hard, but in many ways, my road was even harder. I somehow had to repair the psychological damage that I'd done to people. I had to convince people that I was different. It wasn't easy. People take a long time to change their opinion of you. It's strongly fixed. But I did change. And when I changed, I found I loved speaking to him. It wasn't like talking to anyone else. He always had a different way of looking at things. He was a good friend to me, and to my brother, and to my sister. He stayed with us in Bethany whenever he was near Jerusalem. One time we were talking late into night, and he said to me, I am the resurrection and the life. He asked me if I believed him, and I did. I truly did. I remember that terrible day, the day they took his limp, lifeless body down from that brutal cross. I had given up everything for him. I had changed beyond my imagination. I had given my soul. But through my tears, all I could see was his poor, battered body, lying on the bones of the countless other victims who'd suffered in that awful place. We could only stand and watch, the other women and me, grateful that at least Joseph of Arimathea would give him a decent burial. The resurrection and the life, he had told me, but all I could see was his bruised, bloody corpse. All I could see were his lifeless eyes staring at me. I stood and watched as the sky blackened, as the rain began to fall. Only a couple soldiers were left now, and Joseph's servants lifting the body onto the stretcher. Soon there would be no one left. The world was moving on. People had other things to do, appointments to keep, business to attend to. I could only stand and watch. But now, I had lost everything. Where was this resurrection? Where was this life?
Joseph of Arimathea. He died at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on that Friday. The next day was a Sabbaton, the most holy Sabbath of the year, the feast of Passover. I had to act quickly. Under Jewish law, the next day begins at 6 o'clock in the evening. After that time, all work is forbidden. Now, the Romans didn't bury the body of criminals or terrorists. Usually they just threw them down from the high beam and left them on the ground for dogs or vultures. Golgotha, the place of the skull. Outside the city, away from decent people, the place of torment and despair, the ground littered with the corpses and bones of Roman justice. We are not like them. We have a law from a higher source. We bury our dead. I knew they couldn't afford a tomb, these Galilean peasants. You know how much a tomb in Jerusalem costs? But I knew I'd be taking a risk by going to Pilate. I'd be showing him my hand. I'd be implying that I was in sympathy with the teacher. I had to play it carefully. Insist that the demands of the law meant his body couldn't hang on that cross on the Sabbath. It also meant I'd be making myself ritually unclean in two ways: by going into the house of a Gentile and by touching the body of a dead person. Did it matter? Yes. It meant that on our most holy day, I was unable to eat the Passover. I had a high status. I was an important man. I was a member of the Council of the Sanhedrin, and people looked up to me. But when I saw him there hanging on that cross, humiliated and beaten, I realized everything I had was meaningless. The fine clothes, the expensive wines, the best seats in the synagogue, a private tomb. All of it meant nothing. It was a moment of clarity. I had no choice. I asked the Roman governor for the body of Jesus. Who was he? He was the one who calls me as he calls you, to leave cowardice behind, to make a choice, to be in solidarity with the kingdom of God, to go through his death and resurrection, to commit yourself to a road, his road, the road less traveled, the road of transformation and of reconciliation, the road of justice